Elena Carter adjusted the folded resume in her trembling hands, her heart pounding as she stepped through the revolving glass doors of Hamilton Enterprises. She looked nothing like the other applicants waiting in the sleek marble lobby. While they wore tailored suits and polished shoes, she wore a plain cotton dress and old leather flats. Her hair was tied in a simple braid, the same way she used to wear it when helping her father on the farm. Some whispered when they saw her. Others stared outright, smirking. A farmer's daughter here competing for a corporate analyst job in the biggest agribusiness firm in the country? To them, it was laughable. But Elena wasn't here for their approval. She was here because she had no choice. Since her father's sudden death, she had been the one keeping their small farm afloat, juggling debts and caring for her younger brother. She knew the soil, the markets, and the brutal reality of survival. What she didn't know was whether a man like Victor Hamilton, the cold, ruthless CEO notorious for crushing small farmers, would even give her a chance. Elena Carter, a receptionist called. Whispers rippled through the waiting room as she rose. Her chin lifted, and she walked into the boardroom. Victor Hamilton sat at the head of a long glass table, surrounded by his board members. Tall, impeccably dressed in a black suit, he exuded authority and arrogance. He didn't look up at first, just scanned her resume, then chuckled under his breath. "So," he said finally, his sharp eyes lifting to meet hers, "a farmer's daughter wants to sit in my office? Interesting. Did you mistake this interview for a barn inspection?" Laughter broke out among the executives, but Elena didn't flinch. "No, Mr. Hamilton," she replied calmly. "I came here as myself. I'd rather be judged on my skills than on a label stitched into my jacket." The room went quiet for a moment. Victor's smirk thinned. He leaned back in his chair, intrigued. "Tell me, Miss Carter," he drawled, "what makes you think you belong here, in the jungle of business, when all you've known is the dirt of a farm?" Elena's brown eyes sharpened. "Because survival's our second nature. When droughts destroy crops, when markets collapse, when pests eat half a season's work, farmers adapt. We don't have the luxury of giving up. If we fail, we starve. That's the jungle, I know." A hush fell over the boardroom. Victor straightened. "Bold words. Let's see if you can back them up." For the next 30 minutes, he fired questions like bullets. Market projections, supply chain problems, risk analysis, negotiation tactics. His intent was clear: break her confidence. But Elena met each challenge head-on. When asked about distribution logistics, she explained how her family moved crops through broken rural roads with barely any resources. When grilled about risk management, she described diversifying crops to reduce losses during bad seasons. Her answers weren't from textbooks. They came from lived struggles, sharp decisions made under pressure, and the grit of survival. The smirks on the board members' faces slowly disappeared, replaced by astonishment. Finally, Victor leaned forward, his voice cold. "Impressive. But if you're so resourceful, Miss Carter, why is your family farm drowning in debt?" The question cut deep. Elena's throat tightened, but she forced her voice steady. "Because companies like yours dictate the prices. Because men like you build empires by squeezing small farmers until there's nothing left to take. My father worked himself into an early grave not because he lacked intelligence, but because the system is rigged against him." Gasps echoed around the room. Victor's smirk returned, though weaker this time. "Careful. Insulting the man who could hire you isn't very smart." Elena's chin lifted higher. "I didn't come here to flatter you, Mr. Hamilton. I came here to prove something. If you want loyalty, grit, and real results, I am your best candidate. But if you only want another suit who says yes to everything, then I'll walk out now." Every pair of eyes turned to Victor. For the first time in years, the CEO was silent. Elena had walked into the lion's den dressed like a lamb, but she had just made the lion hesitate. And what she revealed next would leave the entire boardroom speechless. The boardroom air was thick with tension. Elena's words had sliced through Victor Hamilton's arrogance like a blade, and for the first time, the CEO wasn't smirking. Victor narrowed his eyes. "You speak with passion, Miss Carter, but passion doesn't run companies. Numbers do. Profit does. Do you even understand what it takes to manage an empire like mine?" Elena met his gaze without flinching. "Yes, and I understand something else you have forgotten. Without the farmers you exploit, your empire collapses. You sell food, Mr. Hamilton. And who do you think grows it? The room fell into stunned silence. Victor leaned back, pretending to be amused, though his jaw was tight. You make it sound as if you have leverage, but you don't. You're just one girl from a farm, applying for a job far out of your league. Elena hesitated. Her fingers tightened around the edges of her resume. She had promised herself she wouldn't reveal it unless absolutely necessary. But now was the time. She took a breath. You're wrong. I do have leverage. Victor arched an eyebrow. Oh? Do enlighten us. Elena's voice rang steady. My father may have died in debt, but before he passed, he invested everything we had into an innovation, a soil enrichment formula. It's natural, sustainable, and it increases crop yield by 30% without additional cost. He spent years perfecting it, and I've finalized his work. I own the patent. The board members straightened in their seats. Murmurs spread across the table. 30% yield? That wasn't just innovation. It was a revolution. Victor's expression flickered. For the first time, his mask cracked. You own the patent? Yes, Elena said firmly. And I haven't sold it to anyone. I came here to test something, to see if Hamilton Enterprises deserved it, to see if you were a man who valued people or just profit. The executives exchanged startled glances. Some leaned forward, clearly captivated. Victor tried to recover his composure, but his voice had lost some of its bite. Even if that's true, why reveal it here? Why risk giving me this information without a deal in hand? Elena's smile was faint but powerful. Because I wanted to watch your reaction. And you just gave me my answer. The room erupted in whispers again. Victor's cheeks flushed, a mix of anger and realization. He had underestimated her, mocked her, tried to crush her, and instead she had turned the interview into her own battlefield. One of the board members spoke up. Mr. Hamilton, with all due respect, this formula could give us an edge no competitor could match. Ignoring it would be a mistake. Another executive nodded. She's not just an applicant. She's an asset. Victor's hand tightened on the table, but he forced a smile. Miss Carter, he said slowly, if what you claim is real, Hamilton Enterprises would be very interested in acquiring it. And perhaps in offering you a position. Elena shook her head. Not just a position, Mr. Hamilton. A partnership. I won't sell my father's work to be buried in some file. I'll work with you, if, and only if, you change the way you treat small farmers. They deserve fair prices, fair contracts, and a chance to survive. The boardroom went dead silent. No one had ever spoken to Victor Hamilton like this, and lived to tell about it. Victor studied her, his arrogance dimmed by grudging respect. He saw not just a young woman in a plain dress, but a strategist, a fighter, someone unshaken by his power. Finally, he gave a short nod. You're bold, Miss Carter. Bold enough that I can't ignore you. Perhaps this empire of mine does need a voice like yours. Elena's shoulders loosened. For the first time, she allowed herself to breathe. The farmer's daughter had walked into a lion's den and walked out not as prey, but as a partner. And though the city would soon whisper about the girl who outsmarted the arrogant CEO, Elena knew the truth. She hadn't just won a job. She had won justice for every farmer her father once stood beside.